Hi, everyone. I am so excited because I am speaking with author Jessica Chicchetto Heineman, and we are talking about her brand new book. She's going to hold it up for us to see called Sound Like Titanic. Oh my gosh. You know what, Jessica, on my channel, like I do book lists all the time
Mhm.
because I'm
Yeah.
always looking for books. Well, this book, I must have talked about it at least 3 times
Oh,
in
wow.
different like
Thank you.
categories, and like books coming out and then memoirs coming out. And I kept saying to people, look at this book. I cannot wait to read this book. And then I watched the video on Amazon. Everybody I'm going to put the Amazon page. Go watch the video. It's hysterical and good. And now, like at first I thought it was hysterical, but then after I read your book, I'm like, it's kind of sad and hysterical. It's like
Right.
it's got lots of emotion in it, right?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and yours is the perfect memoir. I love memoirs to be like under 300 pages,
Mm.
short chapters that keep moving. And as I'm reading it, I'm like giving you high fives. I'm like,
Oh.
Jessica, this is perfect. Because sometimes they get too wordy and and you get caught up. But yours, like every chapter, it just kept moving. And even though we were changing timelines a
Mhm.
lot,
Yeah.
like I don't know, it was weird. And I was thinking, because I didn't do that well in English. I read all the time, but my grammar, but then I was like, what person is this in? What do you call that?
Oh, yeah. So I do switch the point of view. I
Right.
start in first person, and then I pretty quickly talk about how, for me, and I think this is actually true for a lot of women or other people who are marginalized in some way. I didn't quite feel when I was beginning this like I had the right to even tell my own life story. I mean, that sounds very ridiculous, but I think it's actually really common. Melissa Phoebos, who is another memoirist, has written a beautiful article about this in Poets and Writers that I recommend everyone check out about how women often feel that they don't have the right to tell their own stories, particularly people with traumatic stories. Mine is not that traumatic, but still, I felt kind of like, who really wants to hear about me? So, switching the pronoun for me was a way of kind of getting around that problem where it's like, okay, there's something about calling yourself you, or I've seen some memoirs do it in the third person that allows you to construct yourself as a character on the page without feeling like you're talking about yourself too much, if that makes sense. So, as problematic as that might seem, I think it actually is really helpful for people trying to write memoirs. It's like, can you see yourself maybe a little bit removed?
Right. So, okay. So that's a third person, like
Yeah.
writing. Did you get confused at all? Like as you're writing it, did you get like,
Well, yeah, so I did have a plan, which
okay.
is that when I write about myself in the past, that's in second person. And then there's a thread going through of when I'm on what I call the God Bless America tour with the composer. And that is all done in present tense for the most part. By the end of the book, I feel like I've won my voice.
Yeah.
And so the ending of the book goes into first person, and I feel comfortable again saying I. And so all of that kind of ties into the larger themes of like feeling like you're a fraud, imposter syndrome,
Yep.
yeah, like faking it until you can make it sort of
Right.
themes. So
But
yeah.
I did love that. I
Oh,
really did,
thank you.
because it kind of took me into the story instead of
Uh-huh.
separating me from the
Uh-huh.
story. It kind of brought
Yeah.
it in.
Oh,
And as
great.
I'm reading it, I was like, this is really brilliant. I love this,
Oh.
You don't read it too often, but I did. I really enjoyed it. And your story is just crazy. It's like I love your story. But what I couldn't believe, like, is how brave you were. Like, I know maybe we don't see ourselves. That's the thing. I think it's we don't see ourselves as brave, or we're
Mm,
not proud of ourselves. Sometimes that's one of those, when people say they have mantras that they try to counteract in their head to all the
mm.
horrible things we say, like things we wouldn't
Yeah.
say to a stranger and we say to ourselves. And one of mine is like, I'm proud of you, because I tell my children, but it's like I always, with me, we're so critical with ourselves. But with you, I was like, you were so brave. Like you, I love the part where your parents are like, okay, it's going to cost, how much is it going to cost you to go to Colombia? And you're
Right.
like, only $8,000. And I have to eat and, do other things. But like, you didn't see that. Like you tackled it. Like
Yeah.
a lot of people would have ran the other way. Okay.
Well, thank you. Yeah. And that's a kind of another thread of the book is just my struggles to pay for college, which yes, when I was 18, I was probably a little braver than I am now. In terms of being like, oh yeah, what's the problem? I'll just go to New York City. I'll make I can make $60,000. What's
Right.
like, yeah, any 18-year-old can make that. And of course, part of what the book chronicles is my real struggles to actually come up first with money for tuition when I was at college. And then after I graduated, just like the basic living requirements of New York City
Right.
and just like my successes and failures with just how to make a living in all the senses of that word, like how to make money, but also how to make a life for yourself that isn't fully dependent on making money.
Oh, so okay, I'm going to read the first paragraph because this is
Okay.
almost like my favorite first paragraph that I've read in a long time. The space between a violin's fingerboard and its bridge is about an inch wide. If a bead of sweat from the right hand causes the bow to slip a millimeter to the right or left, the horsehair will crash against the bridge or screech across the fingerboard. The left hand navigates an even narrower plank approaching the fingerboard at an unnatural angle with no spatial clues to guide fingers into their correct positions. And you know what? I've never played the violin, but I always have thought that the positioning of
Mhm.
everything just looks so unnatural.
It's so
Like
awkward.
your neck, you know.
Yes. Yes, it's really hard and it's painful too. I mean, part of the reason little kids are better at this, I think, is because they are just better able to adapt to like the kind of awkward and sometimes painful kind of positioning that playing the violin requires. It's a really difficult instrument. One of the hardest. I think just according to most people who
Right.
study these sort of things, I think it's seen as that. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to let you tell everybody a little bit about this because I don't want to
okay,
give, I want people to read it. I don't want to give too
okay.
much away. So,
Sure. Well, on the surface, this memoir is about my time working for a man that I call the composer. I really do play the violin and had always wanted to be a violinist. But I wasn't good enough. I got up to New York City, realized I'm never going to cut it as a music major. So I kind of went on my way trying to make money for tuition. And then one day I got this job for this ensemble. And I immediately got hired without an audition, without an interview, anything, and quickly realized that the reason I got hired is because the microphones in front of me were never turned on, and a CD recording of another better violinist was being blasted to unsuspecting audiences.
wow.
So it kind of goes from there. And we travel all over the United States, China. We appear on PBS. We are, some of the concerts that that ensemble does are at some of the nation's finest concert halls, like Carnegie Hall and Lincoln Center.
It's
And
crazy.
yeah. So that's kind of, like it's the comic relief of the memoir. There are just like all sorts of crazy things that happen on the road. And the composer is quite a character in his own right. He is obviously a real person. But, underneath all of that, there are these bigger themes that I'm trying to examine and that were raised for me as I was writing. Themes of gender. What is it to make your place as a young woman in America, which is a
Right.
little bit different of a question than just making yourself a place in America. Issues of class. When I had grown up in a small town in Appalachia where we were one of the most well-to-do families in town, and then I got up to Columbia where I was seen as the poor kid. Where I was donating my eggs and doing all these horrible jobs, right, to just pay for tuition. And somewhere like Columbia, that makes you poor. And I mean, to the point where people would
Right.
donate their clothes to me. People felt bad for
Wow.
me, and that was very strange too. I mean, my dad is a doctor, so being in a world where you're thought of as poor is extremely strange, and kind of shows you of how rich the people in that world were. So there's class, and then finally, as I was on the road with the composer, I started to experience very severe panic attacks. So, panic attacks, for anyone who's had them, they really are this like separation between what's real, reality, and what's in your head, which is fake, which is like, the bear is chasing you, you're going to
I was
die,
just
sort of
going to
thing.
say to tell that story because I suffered like 30 years with panic attacks.
I'm so sorry because it is the
It
worst.
is. And I don't get them a lot anymore. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
54,
Yeah.
but if I go like somewhere high, like as low as the second floor of a mall, I can be okay. The thing about panic attacks is you can be okay and
Right.
then you can be not okay.
Right.
So
Right.
like one time you can go up and be like, "Hey, I'm up
Yeah.
here," you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that must have been like you on stage like, "Hey, I'm here." And then the
Yeah.
next time it's like, "Oh my god, what am I doing?" Like
Yeah.
this is
And the crazy thing
crazy.
is, yeah, you look completely normal. I was up there. The composer always
Right.
wanted us to smile while we were playing, so I was smiling and Meanwhile, inside, literally felt like I was going to die at any moment. Like I had all these delusions that like the stage lighting was going to fall on me, that I was going to pee my pants, that I was going to throw up, that I was going to like. So, in a sense, the book is also about mental illness and about how that is a separation between the real and the fake. So, the whole book, in a nutshell, is about this separation of what happens when society and an individual can no longer tell the difference between what's real music, what's fake music, what's real, reality, and what's not.
Yeah, and it's weird because they made me feel like a fraud. Because they do. They make you feel like, because you're like acting normal, but in the inside you're dying, and you're like, can they tell on my face? Like, can they tell right now, like what's going on in my head? And unfortunately, like my children have really bad memories of my panic attacks, but they have them now too. Like they get them.
I'm so sorry.
But in a weird way, I think because they saw me with them, like it's not as bad for them.
Yeah.
Even though they don't. You don't want to diminish somebody's panic attack. You don't want to do that.
No. I mean, most people are diagnosed in an emergency room. That's how real they feel.
I've been there. I've been in an emergency room. Mm-hmm. I've walked out. I haven't actually, but I've gone to an emergency room and then you sit there and you kind of and you're like, okay, all right, I'm good.
Right. Right. Or they give you some drugs and you're like, oh, I'm actually fine.
Oh my gosh. Right. So, I loved when you said it's not about, people say it's about that feeling of if a bear's chasing you, and you're like, no, it's a feeling of if the bear is on top of you.
Yeah.
That's the feeling.
Exactly.
So, I think people are going to get so much from this memoir, and I love memoirs. I really do. But this is like, I love the cover. Like that cover is amazing.
I'll show it again.
Show it again. Because when I first saw the book, I was like, I wonder what this is about. Like, it's like it, and underneath it says memoir, and you're like, a memoir. Okay, but it's such a great cover. It stands out in a crowd,
Yeah. They did a beautiful job with this. I think the ink, particularly.
Yes.
My editor said that this is something you'd be able to see from outer space when he was describing it to me, and I think he was right on that. You can really see it from a long ways away.
Okay, so before I let you go, like now when you write a memoir, this is always the next question: is like, what's next?
Yeah. I am working on another book. I'm one of those writers who's like, I can't really talk about it that much or I'm going to jinx myself. It's like, those brilliant ideas that sound brilliant in your head, and the minute you write it down on a page, it's like, oh, this is so stupid. So I'm still at that very first draft sort of stage. I think it will be a memoir. But I can't really say more than that. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, you know what, Jessica? I'll read it because I love your writing so much. So you know where to find me when that comes out.
I would love that.
Everybody, all of Jessica's links are going to be listed below. Go to that Amazon link and watch the video. It's crazy good. You'll love it. And thank you so much. And thank you for letting me read it. I enjoyed every word of it.
Oh, thank you so much for reading and for having me.
Sure. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye.